Hello students, this video is about cluster analysis. Let us look at some theoretical aspects of cluster analysis. A cluster is nothing but a group of similar objects. The objects can be people, especially customers or brands or any other objects. If clusters are formed based on the customers, then we call it segments, and these segments can be further used for segmentation purpose. This particular video explains cluster analysis for customer segmentation. Cluster analysis is best performed when the variables are on interval or ratio scale. In our case, these examples, they are on interval scale. There are two major classes of cluster analysis. First is hierarchical clustering and non-hierarchical clustering. In hierarchical clustering, some measure of distance is used to identify distance among all pairs of objects to be clustered. And one of the popular distance is Euclidean distance, another is squared Euclidean distance. Now, if you imagine two points P and Q in space, in n-dimensional space, then the P1's coordinate is suppose P1 on one axis, P2 on another axis, like Pn on nth axis, and Q coordinates are Q1, Q2 up to Qn. Then the distance, Euclidean distance, is computed by this formula: P1 minus Q1 the whole square plus P2 minus Q2 the whole square, and so on. And then the square root is taken. So this is the Euclidean distance. So such calculated Euclidean distance becomes the basis for forming the clusters, right? So the author suggests that we should use both hierarchical clustering as well as non-hierarchical clustering, one after another. So when we use the hierarchical clustering, it gives us agglomeration schedule, and this output of agglomeration schedule gives us suggestion for how many clusters we should go for in non-hierarchical clustering, where we need to give a fixed number of clusters. So the non-hierarchical clustering, which is also called as k-means clustering, then gives us the clusters with their final nodal centers. These nodal centers are then used to create profiles for each cluster. These profiles can be used to shape the marketing or communication strategies or campaigns to achieve the best targeting of these clusters or segments. So now let us take an example from Nargudkar and understand the cluster analysis. So in this data, a major Indian FMCG company, like for example Godrej, wants to map the profile of its target market in terms of lifestyle, attitudes, perception, etc. So the company's managers prepare, with the help of their marketing research team, a set of 15 statements in their questionnaire, which they feel measure many of the variables of interest. And then in the survey, the respondents had to give their opinion on a 5 points Likert scale, which is 1 strongly agree, 2 agree, 3 neither agree nor disagree, 4 disagree, and 5 strongly disagree. So the statements are given here. I prefer to use email rather than write a letter. I prefer that quality products are always price high. I think twice before I buy anything. So each and every statement tries to cover one particular attribute of the customers and tries to capture their opinion about it. So you can see all this 15 statements. This is our survey statements. So the last one is, I prefer to pay by credit card rather than in cash. So the data such so collected, now you can see this data. This is the data where the column, each column is a particular the particular statement out of the 15 statements, and we have taken a sample of 20 customers. Now the first step will be to go for hierarchical clustering, and what we are going to get is agglomeration schedule. So let us perform that. Analyze. Here we are using classify and we are using hierarchical clustering, and select all using, you can use control A, and then in statistics go for agglomeration schedule. Other things we are not really looking for, but so we will take go for agglomeration schedule, and we will get this particular agglomeration schedule which I have already captured in the Word doc. So let us go to the Word doc. So in that agglomeration schedule you get a fusion coefficient. If you see this, this is the fusion coefficients, and these are the stages. So I am just using stages fusion coefficient from the table. And then what you need to do, you need to go from bottom to top, and you need to find out the delta. So what exactly is delta? Is the difference between that particular row value of coefficient and the stage before that, what is the value. So how much difference or delta is you are getting. So 58.15 minus 51.79 will give you 6.36. 51.79 minus 47 will give you 4.79, and so on. Then we are going to look for the maximum value of delta for deciding our clusters. So if you look at this, we get the maximum value as 6.36. But what it is suggesting, that means that you should go for a single cluster of 20. Then the clustering is not going to happen. Hence, we do not go for this particular value. The second one is this 5 here, but it means that out of your 20 customers you are going to make 14 clusters. So that also is not a good idea, because in that case every cluster will have just one particular person, so it's not really a cluster. In when you have a very big number of customers, then you can go for higher clusters. But so the next higher value is 4.68. So this is, and also 4.79. So 2 cluster or 4 cluster, but the author has decided to use 4 cluster solutions. So we also stick to that. So we will use 4 cluster solution. So what does that mean? That we are now going to use k equal to 4 in our next analysis. So we will go for analyze, classify, and then now we'll use k-means cluster, and here again control A, transfer, and we are going to use number of clusters as 4, right? And then we are going to go for initial cluster centers. We do not want actually, so we will just go ahead, and then we get the final cluster centers as well as number of cases in each cluster, which gives you the idea of size. So that, so number 2 is the highest biggest cluster with 6 number of customers into it, and fourth cluster is the smallest with 4 number of customers in it. So we take this, we have already taken this to our Word doc. So let me take you to the Word doc. So when we do this, we get these values, and now you are going to use these values to create a profile, means describe that particular cluster using our original scale. Our original scale was 1 strongly agree, 2 agree, and all that. So suppose the company wants you to focus on cluster 1, that is this cluster. Then using these values for each of these attribute, use these values and describe that cluster. So this is what the profile of cluster 1 will look like. They are email users, feel quality comes at a price, not careful spenders, do not like television much, etc., 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 etc. So you can use this particular information very, very effectively in designing the communication strategies or communication or advertisement campaigns to focus this particular cluster customers. If the company tells you to focus on the largest customer, you should go for cluster number 2 and describe that. If the company asks you to go for the smallest or the niche cluster, then you can go for cluster number 4. So this is how we develop the profile of a required cluster using the final cluster centers and our original scale which we used. Thank you.